Joining us now from one of America's most dangerous cities, it is the one and only Joel Samy. I say that, Joel, good morning to you, sir. If you were planning a vacation in Washington, D.C., your nation's capital, be very careful. We have heard more and more people say that if you don't know what you're doing, where you're going, and you become too leisurely distracted, you can have problems. And then we see this former Trump official, Mike Gill, who everybody said was just a heck of a guy. He was shot by a carjacker last week in Washington, D.C., died from his wounds on Saturday. It is with profound sadness that I wish to inform the community of the passing of my husband, Mike Gill, said his wife, Christina Gill, in a statement. But he was a former Trump official, Mike Gill, shot from a carjacking in Washington, D.C. And that's a shame, because it ought to be a place that every family takes their kids to Washington, D.C., and as part of history. You okay, sir? Everything all right?
Absolutely, indeed. A very good morning to you, Paul, from Washington, D.C. And as you've mentioned, we are certainly very much saddened by the recent death of the Trump official, and we're just hoping and trust that, certainly our prayers are with them at this time.
Joel, I got to tell you, this is so complicated about what's going on over there. And for people who don't follow this and then know the history that well of what is happening, if you can kind of explain it a little bit, because I know we had 85 targets, none of them actually in Iran. We want to get back to Iran, but we don't want to get back at Iran. We didn't attack the installations as far as the possible nuclear facilities or anything like that. Most of what we hit was outside. And where are we with this? And is Biden doing what response needs to be done?
Well, as we can reflect on the fact that peace through strength works, and if our adversaries and rivals attack American bases or U.S. Navy ships, there is a response, and we have a history of responding to these threats. In fact, in the 1980s, we remember in 1988, when the Iranians attacked one of our ships, President Ronald Reagan took down half of the Iranian naval fleet, their ships, and basically went after a couple of their oil platforms too. We know that President Trump addressed this issue during his time by heading over, making sure that General Qasem Soleimani was killed. And as we look at the 85 airstrikes that have taken place since Friday, we also find out that the Biden administration actually telegraphed this message to Iran. So they were anticipating these attacks. And so one has to question if these attacks were successful or not, and if it will be a deterrent, because Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. It targets America, Israel, and the rule of law civilization, which includes Europe.
Do you think we have good intel on the ground there like we used to have?
I think that's certainly questionable at this stage. In fact, we are very concerned that Iran is getting much closer to possessing nuclear weapons, and that will be a serious threat for all of the individuals in the region, but also Europe, which is not too far away, and America. So these are concerns. I mean, the information that Israelis are providing to the U.S. and to Europe and other rule of law civilization countries is that Iran is a major threat.
Joel Anand Samy, who is the host, one of the co-hosts of America's Roundtable, which is an incredible program, and some great guests too, by the way. I do want to say this, that you think we are underplaying some of the dangers that are happening in our country right now, because Iran has openly threatened the United States of America, saying that when we have a chance, we'll attack. And the border is so porous now. There was a report that there were some Al-Qaeda members, and it was a large group of Al-Qaeda people. I'm thinking 10 or 15 people. I forgot what the report said, was captured in one general area. Are we underplaying the seriousness of what could happen?
Absolutely, Paul. In fact, with the Biden administration, we
Hmm.
have an open border policy. And that is not protecting America's borders. America's sovereignty is at great risk than ever before. In fact, we have more individuals that have been apprehended that are on the terror watch list than any time before.
Yeah.
It is a serious concern. And one of the issues that we still have to address is the fact that Iran is moving into our region. In fact, in Venezuela, they have set up bases for the Hezbollah. They have purchased land. There is an agreement with the Venezuelan government. And what in the world is Hezbollah doing in Venezuela? They're certainly not involved in agriculture or other projects, but it's being used as a staging ground for perhaps attacks on other countries in the region and a training grounds for attacking the United States. So we certainly have great challenges as it comes to Iran, a state sponsor of terrorism, and
Hmm.
diplomacy with a terrorist network doesn't work. We certainly need to see the Biden administration address this issue with greater seriousness. And we have seen how the Biden administration made it possible for Iran to actually become more emboldened than ever before.
It is kind of a different ethnicity that are in the United States of America as far as through immigration, because this one's political. You take a look at those who have moved into places like Minnesota, or they've become politically active. It's not like a lot of the Asian immigration that came through, or Italian American or Irish American. These folks are in and they get political immediately, wanting to turn America into their home country. We saw the Palestinian, not riots in many cases, but the blockades and everything else. We had the bridge across from Memphis to Arkansas, was a massive blockade over the weekend, and they impeded traffic for a long time there. As a matter of fact, I think we do have some members of the state legislature in Tennessee now they want to make it a felony, and that if you do that, then it is a felony and can be arrested for it. But it's amazing that we already don't have that. Your thoughts?
In fact, this is a serious concern. When individuals come to America legally, we have seen for centuries, they come to contribute to America's greatness. They appreciate the rule of law, protection of property rights, economic liberty. These are the various key elements of American exceptionalism that draw people. But the uniqueness of America is that when people come to America to contribute and to assimilate. But what we have seen, specifically as it relates to the Arab American community, those that have come from Lebanon, the ancient Israel, if you want to call it, the Palestinians. In fact, what we've seen in the city of Dearborn, it's become a haven for individuals. This was a city that we all know was the birthplace of Henry Ford, where some of the first factories of Ford were started. But this city has been transformed into an Arab city. And in fact, that has raised greater concerns for America's authorities, because we have not just only seen protests, but there is a concern that these mosques are radicalizing young people. And that is certainly something that ought to be a great concern, not just only for Michigan's legislators and those that are in law enforcement, but for the United States. People come to America to assimilate, not to create their own countries in America. I mean, that is just ludicrous, and we have to address that.
Yeah, you can either assimilate and be part of the country and part of the fabric of the flag, or be a parasite on it. And if you're a parasite, you're going to feed off that host, and sooner or later that democracy is going to die. I have a cut from Donald Trump that he said when he was with Maria Bartoloma, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier. It's a fascinating insight into this president who comes not from a political background, but from a private sector background. I think it's one of the most refreshing things I've heard from him. Probably some classified information, but we'll play that when we come back in just a second or two. I think you'll enjoy it. JT Mitchell joins us at 8:35. The House and Senate resumes action at 4 p.m. this afternoon. Back with more, and Joel Samy Wright said regarding Iran when he was talking in the interview with Maria Bartoloma.
Would have never happened with me. I had Iran in check. Do you know, we hit them very hard for something that they did, and they had to hit back. They feel they have to do that, and I understand that. Do you know they called me to tell me we're going to hit a certain location, but we're not going to hit it. It's going to be outside of the perimeters.
Who called you?
Iran called me. Iran called me, called for me. And they let us know, and we had 16 missiles went off. I believe it was 16. 6 or 7 failed in the air.
When was this?
This was prior to the attack on a fort that we had where they hit back. Do you remember when they sent 18 missiles or 16 missiles? 5 failed. They let us know, don't move. We're going to have to hit you back. Psychologically, we have to do that because we hit them on something. You remember. They sent 16 or 18 missiles, and we knew they weren't going to hit inside the fort. And the media was going, and now I reveal it, the media was going wild because they say it's strange. They're very accurate missiles. How come they all missed? Nobody was killed, if you remember.
Yes,
with all of those missiles, nobody was killed. Now, they had to do it because they have people and they have to show strength. So they aimed the missiles, but they said, please don't attack us. We're not going to hit you. That was respect. We had respect.
That's absolutely amazing.
It truly is, Paul. That statement in itself communicates a bit of the culture of the region. When America is perceived to be weak, they will certainly even be more emboldened. And Ronald Reagan knew it well. President Trump knew it well. And when they responded, Iran listened. And in fact, today, unfortunately, we don't have that in the White House where weakness is perceived.
I mean, you take this to any thugs, whether it's MS-13 or the mafia, whatever it happens to be. Look, I'm gonna respond. I have to save face on this one, but sir, please don't hit us again. We'll blow up some camel out in the middle of the desert somewhere, and we got to save face with our people. In the greatest of terms, that is respect born of fear. And you just don't have that in this administration. The U.S. and also Britain struck 36 Houthi targets in Yemen on Saturday. So the British are also involved in this now, right?
Yes, indeed. And we have other countries that have signed up to actually assist America. We have even Bahrain, a country that signed up to the Abraham Accords that is part of this coalition too. And it's not just a menace targeting U.S. Navy vessels. It's basically bringing to a halt global trade, which is essential for not only Europe, but for America and the rest of the world. Yeah. So what this Iran-backed proxy is doing, the Houthis, they are interrupting global trade and also the transfer of all of these goods that are needed in the West. So it is certainly impacting us here in America. If prices go up, we can certainly give credit to the Houthis for doing that.
What do you think comes next?
Well, that's a very big question. And in fact, we're deeply, deeply concerned with all that's going on the northern border of Israel, with Hezbollah having 150,000 missiles, more targeted, more precise. And we've been in touch with our colleagues and friends in Israel. In fact, as you know, what's going on in Gaza, the U.S. actually has revealed that Israel was able to destroy some 20 to 30% of the Hamas terrorist network. So you can imagine there's a lot more work that needs to be done in order to achieve the goal of wiping out Hamas. But as long as Iran is able to create havoc, we will continue to have problems in that region, and it affects our national security. So we need a strong administration to be able to address that. And this just did not come overnight. We experienced this all the way back from 1979, when the Ayatollah Khomeini and students took over the country, when 50 Americans from the embassy were taken hostages. So we're dealing with an radical Islamic group. And until they're held to account, we're still going to be on the receiving end. And unfortunately, Iran is not affected by any of this, and the Biden administration is not targeting targets within Iran or perhaps even an oil refinery. So I'm not sure what kind of a message the Biden administration is sending to Tehran.
And they're still making a lot of money on their oil, so that's that number one. That would be the first thing you would do. You're talking about strength, and the hostages were held for 444 days, and as soon as Ronald Reagan was sworn in, they were released. That's the respect we need back in the White House. It does matter. Joel, as always, sir, I appreciate it so very much. You have your lineup for this coming weekend already done?
Yes, indeed. We've got a member of Congress joining us that was in Israel right after October 7, and we've got on America's Roundtable a brilliant young individual from Israel whose friend unfortunately was killed on the grounds of the music festival, but he's going to share his story of what he's doing to help his fellow Israelis.
Great program. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate it. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate